was because my cancer biology professor said that he didn't eat plants or vegetables or salads, etc. Because he said that look, plants are trying to kill you. They have these toxins out there that are intended to stop you from eating them. The majority of plants on Earth are inedible and will cause serious harm or even death. If you are having problems with your health, that this low grade exposure might be contributing, and just doing this as an elimination diet, just eliminating out everything you don't need and just eating things that you do need and getting the proper nutrition and seeing what that does. And at least for many, it's making a huge difference. When I'm able to do that for them and really spell it out for them and show them in no uncertain terms, you are seriously nutritionally deficient, have serious metabolic disorders, you have rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's. These are all things that can be managed and addressed.
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. Hey, if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic disease and you're tired of just managing symptoms with potions, pills, and procedures, I want you to check out Revero.com. Our team of dedicated professionals is committed to tackling the root cause of your issue and finally getting you healthy. Hurry up, though. Our spaces are filling up very quickly. Okay, we're rolling now. I'm all sweat. I literally walked out of the gym sweating. I got a busy day, so I'm trying to, just get it in when I can. You get in when you can. But hey, you're in Australia today? Is that where you're at? I know you're all over the damn place, man. You're all over the world. It seems like. But,
I'm actually back in Washington, so I just got back a couple days ago. Yeah.
So cool. We'll maybe meet up if you're here for any period of time. Are you by yourself? You got Ellie with you and the rest of the crew, or?
Oh, just myself. No,
okay.
Elle and the kids had to stay home.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Well, awesome. Glad to have you back. So you're enjoying the crappy 35-degree rainy drizzly weather.
I know. So, and it's been like between 100 and 110 every single day in Perth now too.
Maybe it feels like a break from that. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, I think most folks that are watching this know a little bit about who you are, so we won't belabor that. Tell me what you're up to these days, because as you know, behind the scenes working on a study on multiple sclerosis. There's a few things going on. So what's new in your life these days?
Well, we're trying to put together, like you say, the case series on multiple sclerosis and other sorts of issues and illnesses that we've been seeing that have been thoroughly helped by people going on to a carnivore diet. And, I've seen it in my patient population. I know you've seen it in your patient population. We're seeing reversals of diseases that heretofore are thought to be completely irreversible. And so I think it's important to start publishing that and start getting that out there so people can see this. So I'm doing that in the background. My main practice at the moment is in the metabolic health, functional medicine space. We're trying to address underlying root cause illness, predominantly using diet and lifestyle and using allopathic medicine to fill in the gaps. And 95% of the job is done by just diet and lifestyle. And so we're seeing, amazing results with that. So that's been my main focus at the moment. And that's mainly because the guy who was the medical director, this has been his practice for like 34 years or so. He ended up sort of getting forced into retirement. He had to sort of step out, and it would have shut down if I didn't take it over. So I ended up sort of putting neurosurgery on the side and taking this up, and then with the hopes of getting back into the surgery side of things later on down the track.
Yeah, well, I mean, if somebody spent 20 years doing surgery, you may get more enjoyment out of this, to be honest. I mean, the surgery, it's cool. Surgery's cool. I mean, you get to do neat stuff, and it's a very sort of restricted area. Not many people are in there, operating on people's brains, or in my case, putting new knees and whatnot on patients. So, I guess that practice is in Perth. Is that correct? Is that where you're located?
Yeah, it's in Perth. Thankfully, with modern technology, I can, even though I'm traveling in the States now, I'm still working full time, so I'm still seeing all my patients. It just means I'm working sort of swing shifts. So 9 a.m. in Perth is 5 p.m. here. So right. I start at 5 p.m. I get it. I when I travel like in a different time zone, I often do work, and it's conferences, meetings, and things like that, and you just gotta. Sometimes messes up with your circadian rhythm a little bit, which isn't optimal, but you got to do what you got to do. So let's see what we have in common as far as, patients. I don't know what diet doesn't treat, to be honest. I mean, I got to be honest. I'll say that I think diet impacts every now. Is it like, for instance, you and I both promote a carnivore diet. Carnivore diet has been wonderfully successful for a whole myriad of issues. There are other, there are plenty of ways to lose weight. We all know that. You can do a lot of diets you can lose weight with.
Not every diet puts your depression into remission. Not every weight loss diet puts your autoimmune disease in remission. That's really been my focus over the years, saying, hey, look, I don't care. I'm not going to fight the diet war about what's the best way to lose weight or how you lose weight or things like that. Now, you famously have been, kind of quoted and known for saying plants are trying to kill us. And, I kind of, I even poke fun at you. One of them, I said, well, they're not doing a very good job because most of us are still alive. But I mean, I think it's fair to say that, plants try to dissuade us from eating them, and they kill insects and they kill caterpillars and they make things sick, in acute doses, some more than others. And there's always this low level toxicity. And we just don't have data on 50 years of eating spinach. I mean, we don't. I mean, it sounds goofy, but we just don't have that data. And we've got all those foods that are now in the U.S. system generally recognized as safe, and they don't require there's almost no barrier. The company says it's okay. Oh, okay, well, that's good. You said it's okay. We're going to keep feeding people. What are your thoughts on, now you're in Australia, obviously here in the U.S., and I don't know what's going to happen with Kennedy. I mean, I don't know if he's going to get confirmed or not. Make America Healthy Again, irrespective if he gets confirmed, and I think the Make America Healthy Again movement will still live on and still be practiced. Is there something similar in Australia? Do you have a similar parallel sort of groundswell of people that are saying, hey, we're tired of being poisoned? What's the thought down there?
There are quite a lot, and that was one of the reasons I decided to keep this practice going, was because there were hundreds of patients there that said, look, we just were so disenchanted with the normal medical system. We go to their doctors and their primary cares and GPs, and they just say, well, your numbers look fine, here's some pills, and just go away. This is just getting older. Your body just shuts down. And they didn't accept that, and they didn't accept poor health and no answers. And so that's why they came and sought us out, and then we improved their health quite dramatically. There isn't a political movement like the Maha Movement. However, I think that there are a lot of people in Australia that are using that same terminology and trying to say, hey, we need to make Australia healthy again, and gleaning on the same principles that we're that movement is addressing here. Just about the plants are trying to kill you thing. The whole reason for that is really my professor. It's just an anecdote of my professor. That was what jarred me enough to stop eating plants, in my 20s, was because my cancer biology professor said that he didn't eat plants or vegetables or salads, etc., because he said that look, plants are trying to kill you. They have these toxins out there that are intended to stop you from eating them. And why would you do that? Why would you just walk right into that? So that was why I sort of used that. It's really just because that's what really sparked that for me. I don't think that plants have malicious intent. I don't think there's this murderous sort of ethos that they have. But they, this is just how they defend themselves, and just like a jaguar doesn't want to murder you because, you insulted its mother. It's just like, it's trying to eat, it's trying to live, it's trying to survive. And that's the same with plants. And, some of these toxins we can bear, but, some of them will be more harmful to like dogs and cats, like grapes and avocados can be quite like sickening and maybe even, even toxic or deadly to dogs and cats. And so I think it's just a matter of just trying to bring that awareness that these chemicals, compounds do exist. The majority of plants on Earth are inedible and will cause serious harm or even death. And so it's just to understand that, and just to try to raise awareness that, if you are having problems with your health, that this low-grade exposure might be contributing, and just doing this as an elimination diet, just eliminating out everything you don't need and just eating things that you do need and getting the proper nutrition and seeing what that does. And at least for many, it's making a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think just to put an even more interesting point on that, because a lot of people say, well, I don't eat vegetables, but fruits are good for me because fruits don't have toxins. When the reality is fruits actually do. And, it's just, there's a period where, if you go, most fruits out there are like, there's all these poison berries we always, we heard about as a kid, don't eat the poison berries. Those are fruits. And then many fruits, if they're not quite fully ripened, they're sickening. And what happens is, I think with the ripening process, there's enough sugar production to where the risk reward ratio skews a little higher, that you get a little more energy out of this fruit now, but there's still some toxicity still left in there. And I think that's just something to be aware of. Now, obviously there's fruitarians, there's people that eat a lot of fruit that don't die right away, or maybe even some live relatively healthily, but it's still, you can't use the argument that vegetables are poison, but fruits are completely fine. and understand the same things. Let me ask you about carnivore. Now, I've been doing this long enough to see that there's a lot of people do different things on a carnivore diet. Some people are eating sticks of butter. Some people are eating, relatively leaner cuts of meat. Some people are including eggs. Some are dairy. There's variations, obviously. Have you seen anything consistently with regard to different patient populations saying these guys will do better skewing higher fat? These guys don't really need to do that. What has been your experience in that regard?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've certainly seen people who've done better either way. I haven't found like a particular phenotype of people that you need more fat. Typically, when someone has a more serious illness, cancer, certainly autoimmunity, these sorts of things, where you want higher levels of ketones, lower glucose, in particular, I find that they tend to do better on higher fat, getting more towards the 2 grams of fat to 1 gram of protein, and specifically for cancer, just getting their GKI down. And trying to get that into sort of a therapeutic range. But yeah, I generally tell people to try to eat intuitively, try to aim for the 1 to 2 grams of fat to 1 gram of protein range. And then what tastes good to you, what's responding to you, if your body feels better with a bit more fat or a bit more lean, then just go with that. And then if you're getting like super hard, blocky stools, then you probably increase a bit of fat, because you're probably absorbing all the fat that your body is eating. Maybe that's not enough for your body. I sort of in the mindset that we make a certain amount of bile. I think that's probably on purpose. I think our body's making an expensive resource to get a return on investment, and so based on that principle, I at least personally try to saturate my body's ability to absorb fat and use up all that bile. And so that's sort of what I aim for. And that's going to be different for different people. Different people are going to have different amounts of bile and different requirements for fat and protein. But I do see a lot of people, most people, being able to do that intuitively and being able to eat fatty meat and then listening to their body and learning how to listen to their body, and they can adjust for themselves.
Yeah, I guess that 2 to 1, 1 to 1 ratio, it kind of, if you put a percentage, that's like 62 to 82% or somewhere in that neighborhood, fat calories. And what I tend to see is, and I don't disagree with you with the GKI, the glucose ketone index, you want that as maxed as you can if you're treating, cancer or something like that. Not that I do that often, but the other thing I seem to see is people with what I call central nervous system issues, whether it's dementia, Parkinson's, MS, or even mood disorders like depression and things like that, they tend to seem to do better with fat, a little higher fat dose than those that don't have those things. This has been my observation. It'd be interesting to see. And I'm going to, because as you know, there have been a couple case reports that have been put together. Nick Norwich has put a couple of them out there. Nick's been a wonderful champion and getting the science out there. He says he's agnostic and doesn't really care one way or the other, but I think I think he aligns a little bit with carnivore philosophy anyway, at least in the low carb aspect of it. And so we've got, there's the MS case series, which will, I don't know, maybe a couple months before it'll come out, I suspect. I don't know, you're closer to that than I am. There's one on psoriasis that's coming out. I am working in the background to get some interventional trials going. So I'm working with some of these large cattlemen's groups and state legislatures to try to do that. And it's hard. It's really just trying to get people organized and get them to get off their butt and do this stuff. And if I had my own research lab, and I'm not a researcher and I wouldn't want to pretend to be, and obviously that would be heavily criticized. Do you know of any other research projects that are in the works right now?
Well, actually, now that you mention it, I'm trying to get an interventional trial in for congestive heart failure patients in Perth. There's a cardiologist down there who's very favorable to certainly ketogenic diets and also the carnivore diet, and so he, like I, and I'm sure you have as well, found that there are people with congestive heart failure that are circling the drain towards needing a heart transplant. They're down at 10-15% ejection fraction. And then in a number of months, 4 or 5 months, they're getting a massive improvement in their ejection fraction. And some are even getting completely normalized ejection fraction. So we're seeing this anecdotally. I certainly want to get a case series done on that or release some, case reports. And I've seen this. I've spoken to Dr. Paul Mason. He's been seeing this as well. This cardiologist I was talking about has seen this also. I'm sure you have as well. So we want to get that in an interventional trial. I think we would start with non-ischemic causes of heart failure, because if you have just if you had an MI and you have a big dead wall of muscle, there's less of that's going to be able to come back. However, I have seen, again, anecdotally, a couple of people with ischemic causes of heart failure still improve 20, 30 points on their ejection fraction. And so that's quite remarkable as well. So we're hoping to get that going this year.
Yeah, it probably helps to explain what an ejection fraction is to folks that aren't familiar with that. So when a heart squeezes, when that big left ventricle squeezes, it kicks out a percentage of its blood, and that's called the ejection fraction. And normally it's around 60-ish%, 65%. But then in heart failure, because it's weak, it can't push as much blood out. So now you're left with only getting rid of 20%, 15%. And like you, I've definitely seen people that were in the 20s, and it bumps up to the 40s and 50s, and occasionally it returns to normal, both ischemic and non-ischemic causes. Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit shocked, because obviously the cardiologists are the main group that really opposes carnivore because of the cholesterol issue, because some people see their cholesterol go up, particularly those that get real lean. And we kind of think we know the reason for that due to the lipid energy model, as, Norwitz, Feldman, Matt Budoff, and others have sort of championed and put out there in the literature. Do you, as far as time frame, well, you said carnivore lifestyle, 95% of the issues, and that's, I strongly believe that. I think if you just do those, sleep, exercise, not be sedentary, get some sunshine, eat well, obviously sleep is important, I mentioned that, and then the rest can be filled in with maybe supplementation, maybe some allopathic stuff. Where are you seeing people that struggle? Like I still get a lot of people that consult with me on carnivore diet, and it's usually people that are struggling, or newbies that just want their handheld a little bit and want some advice that isn't crazy. Where do you see finding people struggle with the carnivore diet, and what do you think the causes are, and how do you improve those?
A lot of it has to do with how foreign this looks to them. This just seems just too out there, too crazy. It's just conflicting with their potentially worldview, but also just with what they're used to, what the status quo is. And I'm in a particular situation where I'm cold selling this to a lot of people. Some people have never heard of this before. However, a lot of the people that come to me are extremely highly motivated. So this wouldn't be your typical, family practice sort of patient that's coming in and I'm just trying to, slam this in their face. These are people that have sought every other method to help them, and they have not had success. They're eating less, they're moving more, and they're gaining weight, and they're losing health and having all these problems. And so they're coming to me because it's usually word of mouth that other people that they know have really been helped by this. And so they're very highly motivated. So they're very interested in just doing something that helps them. And when I talk to them about their issues, then we do a deep set of blood panels, and I can go through that and I can show them how they're metabolically sick and their hormones and leptin and insulin are extremely elevated, and why that is and what that does to them. I can give a really stronger pitch. And because they're very highly motivated, they say like, okay, well, look, it sounds really weird to me, but I've got to do something, and might as well try something new. And then most people, you stick with them, sort of see them every week or two just to say, okay, how's everything going? If they can make it to 30 days, usually they're feeling so much better. And then they make it to 2 months and we do a repeat set of blood tests. I can show them all the things I said. If you do this, you will see these changes on your blood test. And that's exactly what happens every single time. That's really, really strong motivation for people to continue on. And like for Dr. Shawn O'Mara, he uses MRIs, visceral MRIs, and that's very visual. You're seeing just your abdomen full of fat, and he's saying these are all the problems that this can cause for you. This is what you need to do to change that. 3 months later, he has an MRI, and it's drastically reduced, and their health is improved. That's a really good selling point. So doing it in that manner has helped me, at least for my patient population, when I'm able to do that for them and really spell it out for them and show them in no uncertain terms, you are seriously nutritionally deficient, you are seriously metabolic, have serious metabolic disorders, you have rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's. These are all things that can be managed and addressed by diet in these ways. And then that happens, they get very highly motivated. There are a couple people that I've found in that it's just, even though they're feeling better, they just really can't deal with the social aspect of it. They're getting a lot of heat from their family and pressure from outside sources, or they just feel embarrassed going to dinners and just ordering meat. Those are the ones that say, oh, I don't really know if I can handle it. However, and then so maybe we'll pull off and we'll go to, they have diabetes, they have this, they have that, they have metabolic disorder syndrome. So I said, look, it needs to be ketogenic anyway. You need less than 20 grams of carbohydrates a day for these reasons. Still focus on meat, but you can have these other things as well. And we come up with a plan and say, okay, fine, we can do that. I've had a number of those patients, there's only been a handful that have really had to do that. Every single one has come back 2 or 3 weeks later, sort of chagrined and saying, yeah, I think I need to go back on a carnivore diet because I was just feeling so much better when I was doing that. I didn't realize it. So that's the main thing for me. I mean, because I put a lot of, I front load a lot of information. I give people homework, and you need to watch these videos, you need to look at these resources. I explain a lot of these things I have very long clinic appointments. So my first appointment will be 45 minutes with a patient. Next one will be an hour and a half. We're going through all their blood work and all their history and all the different forms that they filled out. And so, they get a lot of education up front, and then it's sort of more of a maintenance. And doing it in that manner has worked extremely well for my patient population. And the problem I've seen, it really comes from outside sources. They're just getting a lot of pressure from their family, or they just can't quite, square that lifestyle of them just eating meat. And so they sort of rail against it, but quite often they come back. But, we do a lot of, upfront education on making sure that they have everything they need to succeed on a carnivore diet.
Do you find, one of the frustrations I had when I was practicing as an orthopedic surgeon is, I had 5-minute visits. I mean, realistically, it was 50 patients a day, 15-minute slots, double booked, triple booked, half that time spent typing in the damn EMR and, billing and coding, providing minimal patient care. And so I was like, hey, watch this video. Hey, go read this book. And that's all I could really do. Do you have some ancillary support for these folks, outside of the time you spend with them? Do they have resources? Because I find that to be, that's one of the reasons we started Revero, is because we have the ability to literally talk to people every day if we need to, which is really kind of cool. How do you, because that's the thing, you're not rewarded. I don't know how Australia does, but in the US, as you know, you're not rewarded for spending hours doing lifestyle counseling. It's just not what we're incentivized to do. So how do you get around that?
Well, the first way is I'm completely private. It's completely private practice. And so it's sort of what you have to do. And so patients pay for this out of pocket. It'd be, nice if it didn't have to be that way, but they are paying for the time in there. So it's not like with like a GP where it's just like you have 5-10 minutes, and like if you sort of go over that, like you're not gonna be able to pay the rent. So we do longer appointments, but they do cost money. But I can't have, and we also do, actually that's another thing that we do for a lot of the new patients. We'll sort of do a seminar, several hours on a Sunday, and we'll sort of talk about all these principles. And so that we don't have to have a 3-hour conversation explaining ketosis, and all these other sorts of things in each individual session. So that's one thing that can really cut down on that. You have 30 people come in, you have this big presentation. This is our ethos, this is what we do, and this is how we approach it. And then you can come in with a bit more of an understanding and sort of just fill in the gaps. But also I have a lot of online resources and videos that I've sort of put together. So we send them a lot of links, and we have a lot of handouts on different sort of medical issues and Hashimoto's and people going through menopause, all these different sorts of things. So we have a lot of these resources that we send to people specifically for this. I mean, that's why that was my main driver and impetus for making a YouTube channel in the first place, was because I was having these very long conversations. This is when I was in, neurosurgical registrar, where I really didn't have time to have these conversations with people. But they've got very serious issues, and I didn't feel that it was ethical or moral to just ignore that and just like send them on their way when I know that something could help them. And so I have these videos that I just give them and say, hey, this is your homework. You need to watch these ones. One's on how to do a carnivore diet, but the one's on why to do it, why it matters, why it makes a difference, and the evidence for that. And if you have a good reason why, then the how becomes pretty easy. And so I do send them home with those sorts of things. We used to have like a sort of a nutritional counselor that would have been there as well, and would just sort of see people once a week and just make sure they're staying on track and make sure everything's okay. So they wouldn't have to do like a whole big office visit with me, but they could just see the counselor. And we're trying to get back to that now, and get some more auxiliary staff to help guide people and coach them along the way as well.
Have you seen people with like one of the, some people say they'll have GI, some people have diarrhea, some people will have heart palpitations or skin rashes, things like. How often do you see those types of things? These sort of side effects, particularly transition time.
Yeah, it's certainly not the rule. I think it is the exception. It's common enough. I mean, you have like the keto rash, things like that. I don't see that too often, but I see it occasionally. Palpitations, like you say, typically the palpitations I see people are having just strong, heavy, noticeable beats. But when you check their rhythm and their rate and their EKG, it's plumb normal. It's just there's this strong, noticeable heartbeat that typically goes away. I think that's probably, it's just my own theory. It could be completely wrong, but I think the cardiac myocytes prefer ketones, and it could be that when you're running on ketones that they contract a little harder, and you sort of notice this. And then when people eat carbohydrates, that sort of goes away, so they're going off the ketones. So maybe that could be what it is, but I don't see that all that often. I in my patient populations, for my particular patients that I see that fairly rarely. It's typically within the first couple of weeks. But most people, when you address electrolytes early on and fluid levels and these other sorts of things, I find that it's fairly, it's less common, but I couldn't really put a number on it. But I also find that there are some people that have really low return in their energy levels, or they could have some lingering sort of effects past the 2-3 week mark, and maybe they're at a month or 2 months and they're really not feeling great. Those people, I think, that would really benefit from getting like blood tests done. Maybe they have a deficiency in some form. Maybe there's an underlying condition that they weren't even really aware of, like a hypothyroid issue or something like that. I've tested people whose B12 were exceedingly low and the homocysteine were excessively high. And I correct that early on in my patients, and so they tend to do better. So I see these gaps early on, so I tend not to have ones that are 3 months out and still having problems, because I'll sort of address those things head on. But I've even diagnosed 3 people with autoimmune pernicious anemia because we put them on a carnivore diet. Their B12 is very low, homocysteine very high. Gave them a B12 shot, corrected, but then it sort of came down. I was like, well, that's weird. Maybe they're MTHFR, maybe there's something else. So, okay, add in liver. They're eating liver 3 days a week, and they're only eating red meat, and their B12 is still dropping. So check them for, antibodies for pernicious anemia, and then sure enough, they were positive. I've seen that 3 times. So, it wasn't a complete case where they had no ability to absorb B12, but it was just an impaired ability to absorb B12. And so that's something that if you don't know that about yourself, then you could have these lingering issues that last a long time. But typically the teething issues usually normalize within a couple of weeks in my experience.
Hey folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. Hey, if you or someone you love is suffering from chronic disease and you're tired of just managing symptoms with potions, pills, and procedures, I want you to check out Revero.com. Our team of dedicated professionals is committed to tackling the root cause of your issue and finally getting you healthy. Hurry up, though. Our spaces are filling up very quickly. Yeah, it's interesting because the relationship between B12 and homocysteine is kind of inverse. If your B12 is high, your homocysteine is usually under control. But if you have low B12, homocysteine is high, and homocysteine is associated with cardiovascular disease and some other, negative outcomes. But it's, like you said, you think that, well, what could I do to raise my B12? Eat more red meat, which works for most people, right? But you do occasionally get like my B12 is, 1,000, 1,200, whatever. I eat a ton of red meat. My B12's never, ever been low. Not that I'm all that worried about it. But as far as, here's a question for it. So in the media recently, there was a case report written up about a guy who went carnivore, 7-9 pounds of butter and cheese. It is some ridiculous. It wasn't, they put very little information. It was kind of a really like, it was literally somebody said, hey, it's like if somebody said, hey, I know a guy that did this and this is what happened. And they wrote that up. This is how little information is out there. And he's got, xanthelasma. So he's got all these yellow deposits in his hands and probably on his eyes where they usually appear. And, caution carnivore. How often do you see that with people with cholesterol weeping from their hands and having xanthelasma? I mean, I've seen a couple people that get a xanthelasma, but I think there's a underlying genetic predisposition for that. And just so people for people that may be listening to it, xanthelasma, the yellow skin and yellow eyes or yellow deposits under the eyes does not increase your risk for heart disease in itself. There's no relation. If you look at the literature on that, it could be related to high cholesterol, which, that's a whole different discussion. But are you seeing all these people with yellow cholesterol pouring out of their skin?
I've not seen a single person with cholesterol coming out of their hands and feet. I've also never seen a single person eat 9 pounds of cheese and butter a day for months on end either, though. It's one of those weird. I have seen a couple people xanthelasma, popping up, typically around the nose, around the eyes, things like that. I've seen a couple of those, but the vast majority, no, I haven't seen anything like that. It's very funny that people are. I think this is just indicative of the fact that we are making this known, and people are getting actual benefits from this, and so the powers that be have to sort of fight this, and so they're just trying everything they can, throwing the kitchen sink at this, trying to discredit carnivore diet and say, oh, it's horrible and unsafe. And the same people that dismiss the carnivore diet because they say that it's anecdotal, it's like, oh, there's just anecdotal evidence, that's all there is, are now championing this garbage publication, which is just like an interesting pictures submission at JAMA. And it was like, let me do 150 words, so it's this tiny little thing. It has absolutely, none of the necessary information that we would need to make any sort of rational decision about anything. And they're saying that this is proof that, carnivore diet's so dangerous and all these other things. All these vegan advocates are using this and saying, ooh, watch this is so bad. And they're saying that this one anecdotal case outweighs the millions of success stories, which doesn't make any sense. If you say that, well, it's anecdotal, that carnivore diet, anecdotal evidence, like, yeah, but there's millions and millions of anecdotes. And that's still anecdotal. Okay. But this one anecdote, that's viable, but the millions aren't viable. You can't have it both ways. And, somebody who has xanthelasma in their hands and their feet, there's something else going on that's not typical of anybody in the population. So this person probably has some sort of genetic issue, was clearly eating a very strange. I mean, they were saying that he was eating 6 to 9 pounds of cheese, meat, and butter, losing weight the whole time, and then had these sorts of issues. Okay, well, start off, don't eat 6 pounds of cheese. Maybe start with that. I don't recommend that for anybody in on any diet to eat 9 pounds of cheese. But I think I don't think it's indicative of anybody in the carnivore population. This is an extreme outlier, and there's no basis to get concerned about this on a carnivore diet, because we've never seen anything like this. And he's not eating a typical carnivore diet anyway, and I'm sure there's some sort of genetic issue going on there as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was so little, 150 words. That's all the information you get. One picture, and it's almost like an internet meme. It's like here's a picture, and somebody had the made up, almost could have been a made up description. You don't know where it came from. So, and that went in the American, JAMA Cardiology. I mean, this is a prestigious medical journal and you get these carnivore case series that we write up, that like the one on IBD, which was well documented, all kinds of literature, all kinds of lab support, all kinds of details, 5 or 6 pages of information. And that's going to be pushed into like the frontiers of nutrition, like some journal. Right. It's not like the New England, whatever. I mean, it's just, you see the bias against this. And of course we're at the beginning of this movement, the modern version of it, I suppose, as I mean, there's been doctors talking about a carnivore diet since before there was nutrition science. I mean, it's been, 1700s and probably before that. Let me ask you about your own, because, obviously you rugby and used to fight. How's your own, like, are you still able to play rugby and stuff, or what's going on with your own physical stuff?
Well, I would like to. It's hard with timing, but the main reason that I don't at the moment, and you might have some insights on this as an orthopedic surgeon, but because I fought since I was a kid, did a lot of knee strikes in Muay Thai, kickboxing, and so it's just a lot of knee strikes. And no one told me this at the time. It would have been nice, but apparently it's really bad for the cartilage in your patella and your knee. So I damaged the cartilage and the patella that slowly wore down over the years. And I had pretty bad arthritis. Late teens, early 20s, it started, and now it's bone on both sides. And I've got like lateral tracking on my patella as well. And so the lateral aspect of the patella is just worn down to bone. So that causes pain, but it's playing rugby, you don't care about pain. You just deal with it. That's not a problem. The problem is that it flakes off bits of cartilage sort of at the receding edge of the cartilage. And those little flakes, my orthopedic surgeon here in Seattle said that when he scoped my knee, he said it looked like a snow globe. There's about 12 to 14 little flakes of cartilage. And the reason that precipitated that was because my knee just started swelling up. I started getting effusions in the middle of the rugby season. I was here in the preseason with the Seattle Seawolves and the Saracens, and my knee just started blowing out. I felt amazing. I felt so good. My fitness and health was tip top. And then all of a sudden my knee just started swelling up. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Got an MRI. They found all these little flakes. So I thought that might be the problem. So I got that scope. They took all those little bits out, rehabbed that really well. The next year I came back and started playing rugby actually down in Australia. And then halfway through the season, the same thing happened, but on the other knee. Got that scoped, didn't rehab it properly, just was in a rush to get back to playing. And, in a couple of months, it started swelling up again too. So now I just get these stupid effusions in my right knee mostly. And so I can sprint upstairs, I can do hills, I can do squats, I can do all these other things. As soon as I try to run, jog, sprint, play on a flat field that's not inclined, my knee blows up. And so it's been a bit of a pain in the ass. I've been trying to do like the knees over toes exercises. I'm not as good with those as I should be, but that certainly helped with pain, but I still get the effusions. And so at this point, I don't know if I'm maybe down to like stem cell injections or something like that, but I haven't been able to get that to calm down. As soon as I figure out how to get the effusion to calm down, I will absolutely be back on the field. I'm just absolutely chomping at the bit to go and play.
Well, good luck with that. I hope so. I'm almost 60 now, and so my goals are be able to run fast and jump. I mean, like I said, when I turn 60, I want to dunk a basketball and run a decent 100-meter time, and decent 400-meter and a few other things I want to do. So it's definitely you got to put a lot of work in for sure. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, I find that Carnivore makes recovery easy. I have less inflammation, less swelling, less soreness. I can train better. I mean, that's I think as we get more and more people that are advocates, and then you even see the diehard health and fitness people. Some of them are coming around saying, well, you certainly can perform well, maybe not perfect and optimal, but you can certainly perform at a very high level. And I don't know if I just interviewed a guy named CJ Allen, Paris Olympics. He was a 400-meter hurdler on the U.S. Olympic team, ran one of the fastest hurdle times in history, basically Carnivore, so that was pretty darn cool. So yeah, I mean, and then Ryan Talbot is over from Michigan State now in the U.S. decathlon team. I think he ran a 10,300 for a decathlete is
pretty damn fast.
That's friggin' fast. I mean, 10.3 is getting you into that elite. Sub 10 is elite world level, but 10.3 for a guy that also has to shot put, discus, high jump, long jump. It's 1,500s. Pole vault, all those things, all the 9 events that's saying something. It's really, really pretty good. And he's doing it at Carnivore. So that's really, really good to see. Let me talk about, have you had any, I know there's some people that, they've attacked us both personally over time. I know there was some Dr. Ids guy, Lane Norton. I mean, they all come out there, kind of, whatever, attacking you. And I know you've been able to sort of fend that off a little bit. Have you found that as time has gotten by, the attacks have gotten more frequent, less frequent, or what's been your, I mean, obviously as you grow in, as both of us grow in notoriety, more people know about us. There's more people that have opinions on you. And some of them are, some people just don't like it. They just don't like what you represent. They don't like the way you look, whatever. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's just, how's that been?
Yeah, well, I've certainly seen more of a concerted effort recently, in this past year in particular. And so people have been, bigger channels, and people have been making videos and attack videos and questioning my credentials and my degrees and all these sorts of things, or even just, blanket saying that I'm falsifying my credentials, and that's defamation and slander. And so I'm actually suing those people and pursuing that legally to get a resolution that I'm satisfied with. But yeah, I have seen that more and more. At first, when you get videos that sort of get up, that the plants are trying to kill you, lecture that I gave at that medical conference, and a couple of years ago, that sort of went viral. And so as that started going up, you saw people like Mike the Vegan and other sorts of people saying, oh, okay, well, this is getting enough attention. We have to address this, and we have to talk about this sort of thing. But now at this point, yeah, you're right. I think we've sort of gained enough attention that they have to sort of try to have these ad hominem sort of attacks. They've tried to attack me on the substance, and I've responded and shown how their arguments were very underwhelming. And so that didn't work. And so now they're trying the ad hominem attacks, which is typically the sign of a lost argument, that you don't have any substance to go on. And so you have to try to attack the person, try to discredit them personally. And so that's what's happening now, is that people are going to the more ad hominem sort of attacks. I have seen that definitely ramp up. There was a period there where I saw, video after video after video of people coming out with these attack videos. So I didn't know if this was some sort of orchestrated, coordinated sort of attempt, either by them or, maybe people that, who knows? I mean, who knows? I mean, there's a lot of these people that take money from different industries, and those industries do not like the message we're putting out there. I mean, there were cereal companies and Low Carb Down Under medical group, conference group, actually sued to get the minutes of these cereal companies that actually said in their meeting, their board meeting, that this damn ketogenic diet movement is killing our cereal sales. So we need to discredit it. We need to go after these doctors, like Professor Noakes and Gary Fettke and things like that. We need to discredit them, hopefully get their licenses pulled, so we can say this is just a quack doctor that doesn't know what he's doing. He's hurting people, and he's got his license taken away. And they named Gary Fettke by name. He did not have a big channel. He had about 4,000 people, 4,000 or 5,000 people on Instagram at the time. And he was enough of a target that they wanted to destroy him personally and get his medical license taken away. So I don't know if there's something coming from there, or just people just want some content and clickbait nonsense. So they say that, Dr. Chaffee's not a doctor, but, I have seen that definitely ramp up in the last year for sure, which I kind of take as a sign that we're doing some good. If you're not pissing people off, you're probably not working hard enough. Yeah,
that's certainly something a lot of people will refer to. Yeah, I mean, I remember when, Tim Noakes, same thing, South Africa, Gary had that happen to him. In fact, I mean, this was interesting because I remember when Noakes was going through this stuff, this would have been back, 10 years ago at least. Mm. And I remember seeing that, and I was just now getting into ketogenic diets. I'd been personally starting to recommend it for my patients. And because I didn't know, when I would write my patient notes about why, I discussed diet and nutrition with patient, I didn't say ketogenic diet. I just said diet. And I left it, kind of ambiguous intentionally, because I didn't want somebody coming back, oh, you put this person on a ketogenic diet and look at you, you're a bad doctor. Because, I mean, God forbid you leave them on the standard American diet and don't say, and don't tell them to change their diet. That's arguably much worse in my view. So you're in the U.S. How long are you in the U.S. for? How long now this time?
It's sort of open-ended. There's just some family stuff going on, so I just came back to help out with that. So this, when that gets settled down, then I'll go back. Okay. But I'll be here for a little bit anyway.
Gotcha. Okay. And I mean, but you spend most of your time in Australia still. Is that fair to say?
Correct. Yeah. So I have my practice down there, and then my fiance and the kids and things like that. My stepkids, and yeah. So that's been home for the last 6 years. The plan is at some point to come back to the U.S. That's the long term ambition. But yeah, it's nice that I've been able to still see patients. Obviously, when you're in the hospital, there's no working remotely. So at the moment, just with my practice, I am able to see people online. So it does afford me that ability to just be here for a period of time and help out. But the plan is then to go back to Australia with a long-term plan to come back to the States.
So when you see patients in Australia, I don't know how the licensing system, if you're licensed in Australia, is it a countrywide license, or is it only by region, like only in Perth is in Western Australia? I can't remember. Western Australia, right? Yeah. So it's not so you could practice in Sydney, you could practice in Darwin, you could practice in Adelaide, all the various places just with the one license, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I can see patients anywhere as well. So I can do like a telehealth appointment from someone in Brisbane or Tasmania or something like that.
Right. So even though you're here, the patients you're seeing are still Australian folks, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So I can be anywhere, but my patients need to be Australian.
Right. Yeah, from Australia. Got it. Interesting. And do you find, because Australia, I've never been to, I lived in New Zealand playing rugby, but I never went to Australia. So, I kind of generally think of them as similar in, I don't know. I know that some of that would offend a lot of Australians in New Zealand to say they're similar, but I think they all have the same sort of, I don't know, rugged, adventurous experience. Obviously Australia was a prison colony and whatever. You think the people are more, how accepting is carnivore in Australia relative to even the US? Because there's a lot of sheep ranches and there's a lot of cattle ranches in Australia. And do they find it to be just as bizarre?
Yeah, I think. Well, at the moment they do, but yeah, historically, this is a big, farming livestock sort of culture. Sitting out on the grill and putting a bunch of steaks on the barbecue and things like that. Throwing some shrimp on the barbie and things like that. It's a big meat eating culture historically, but I think that's been corrupted and co-opted recently with the big plant-based push. That they really got a foothold in Australia on that one. And they were able to convince a lot of people that this was a really good idea, not only for your health, but for the environment and things like that. And so I know people over there that were rugby players that went vegan just because they were like, well, I can't, this just destroys the planet to eat meat. It's not that I don't like it or I think it's not good for me. I do think it's good for me, but I just don't think it's a good idea to do it for the environment. That's fair enough. So we had a lot of conversations on it from that point of view. I think that the underlying culture was very favorable for meat, though, and that it's just sort of just digging that out and getting that back and dusted off. But when you talk to people about this, I find that it's taken very favorably, and there are quite a lot of people. They're one generation back, maybe two. Their parents and grandparents, where they're seeing that was what they ate. They ate tons of meat, tons of butter, and they can all look back and go like, yeah, they were way healthier. They had a lot better health and none of these issues. So I think it's, when I first got there, the plant-based movement was big. It was a big plant-based movement. I was very surprised by that, but it has come right back around. I think the carnivore, ideology, or just that idea of eating a lot of meat and that being healthy for you, has really captured the imaginations of a lot of people, and it's helped. And so to the point that I've seen people in the hospital when I'm on call at 2 a.m. seeing a patient for neurosurgery. It was actually a kid who had a blocked VP shunt, and I was going to see him. I was assessing him. We're going to get him set up for surgery. And then he sort of just asked me out of nowhere, just said, hey, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah, of course. He said, do you just only eat meat by any chance? I was like, yeah, actually. Like, why do you ask? He said, actually, no, I follow you. I've seen your podcast. I really like it. It's really interesting to me. And that was a couple of years ago, and now, I'm having patients. I had patients that, I had one patient that I came in after I was away for 2 weeks at a conference, and I came in the first day, and he was a new admission with a GBM, glioblastoma, brain cancer. And he already knew that I worked in that neurosurgical department. And so when I walked in doing the rounds, I'm just meeting the patients for the first time that day. His eyes lit up. It's like, oh, Dr. Chaffee, how are you? He started talking to me like we'd known each other for weeks. And I'm trying to rack my brain. I was like, did I admit this guy? Do I know? It's like, I just got back. Like, what's going on? So it's growing in popularity, definitely. And I think that people are seeing it for what it is, which is a much healthier option. They've certainly seen through the bullshit that meat's harmful and things like that. I mean, that doesn't pass the smell test. They start eating meat, they feel healthier, their blood's improved, and their life improves. So it doesn't make sense that that's also killing them at the same time. And so I think that it's actually getting a really good foothold for pro meat sort of things. And now we just have to get that into the political arena like we have here, because they are working very hard to destroy the meat supply in Australia. They're working very hard. There's a proposed tax that I think has already gone through in Queensland that they want to put through, or maybe it's coming, putting like a $3,500 methane tax per cow, right? Well, the total gross figure that most of these farmers get when they sell a whole cow for slaughter is $3,500. So it's like it's every single cent that they would make from that gross is gone to this tax. And so that's instantly going to double the prices of production and things like that. So they're working very hard to do that. So I think that at this point we have a groundswell, and we need to start using that groundswell to start affecting, a political influence as well, so that we can still have a meat supply.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's, once you figure out that meat is essential, and then all of a sudden they say, well, we're going to take it away from you.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a scary prospect. And I think, certainly in the U.S. right now, the political landscape has changed quite a bit. Obviously, whether you like Trump or not, well, maybe this, pulling us out of the Paris Accords and some of the other stuff, and that's going to take some of the pressure off of trying to, ban cows for farting, which is ridiculous, even if you believe in climate change as a major existential threat. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, have the U.S. elections had an impact in Australia, by the way? I'm just wondering how that's been, because I know like Australia had really shifted pretty hard, kind of leftward over COVID and some of the other times. And I don't know, I'm not sure what the story is down there. Do you know?
Well, I certainly have spoken to a lot of people that are looking at the U.S. elections very favorably and thinking that that's going to hopefully pull Australia into a different direction that's not as beholden to these large corporations and is more from a populist standpoint, where we're doing things that are good for the people. I don't follow Australian politics all that closely. So I don't know if that's actually had some effect on the political class and what they're doing. I've certainly spoken to a lot of people, and a lot of my patients are very hopeful about the future, and especially with the Make America Healthy Again, proposal, and they're very, very favorable about that. I have patients that are for Trump and against Trump in Australia. People do have a very strong political opinions in Australia about the American elections, but every single one that this comes up with, they're all very hopeful that Kennedy's going to do good. And some people say, well, that's the only redeeming factor of this election, this, that, and the other. But they still looking at this in a very favorable light. So I hope that does influence enough people to start being more active and start pushing this on their politicians and things like that, saying this is something that we need to. We need to demand better healthcare as well. I think it should be, in theory, such an easy sell for the political class, ones that are thinking about this from an economic standpoint, because the medical system costs a lot of money, and it is rife with inefficiencies and wasted money. And just changing these diet and lifestyle sort of things that could save. I mean, 89% of people in Australia die from non-communicable chronic diseases. The vast majority of these being entirely preventable. And you spend a lot of money treating these things, and that's public money that's coming from the tax base. And so, if you actually did want to have that system run better, and you wanted to save billions of dollars as a country, this is a really, really good avenue to explore. And so I think if people are being serious about that and serious about saving money and fixing the system, that they're going to come around to that as well. And hopefully we'll get get the attention and the ears of some politicians who would see the benefit in that.
Well, awesome. Anthony, I've got to unfortunately go. It's a good note to wrap it up on. Say hi to Ella and the rest of the family. And, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. So hopefully we'll be able to hook up while you're here in the U.S.
Absolutely, man.